Welcome to the Brew Crew Review podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
Well, welcome back, Brewer fans, to Brew Crew Review podcast number 20. With me tonight, we've got up-to-the-date last-minute analysis on the Brewers' 2018 first-round draft pick. And joining me is Scott Bartell. Hi, Scott.
Oh, hello.
And Vince Travato.
Hey, guys.
And Chad is getting scouting reports still, even though the draft is underway. And, so I don't think he's with us. He didn't have the time to call in this time.
He's with us in spirit, though.
That's all that matters. So, on today's podcast, we will, it was delayed slightly as far as us posting on our Twitter because of the fact that we wanted to get our first round draft pick analysis in for you guys. So we waited until after the pick was made. And we're going to talk about that player that we drafted, a future All-Star, possible Hall of Famer for your Milwaukee Brewers. And also, we're going to talk about the Brewers have been doing the last week or so. Still in the first place, NL Central, about BTW, and going forward, we'll do some more analysis and talk about Brewers' upcoming schedule and predictions that way too. So, without further ado, let's see. The Brewers, we picked 21st overall in the draft this year, since the fact that we finished so well last year. And this year we went with another bat, up the middle bat at that, and his name is a shortstop out of high school, Santiago, California, Brice Turang, left-handed hitting shortstop who is expected to possibly stay at short. Some people think he might have to slide over second, but people are excited about his hit tool, and what are you guys' thoughts on the Brewers' 2018 first-round draft selection?
I think it's overall an exciting pick, Craig. He's got a lot of offensive upside. I think that his power numbers might develop, as his professional career blossoms, hopefully. He's going to bulk up a little bit. He's still a young guy. To me, the biggest issue is going to be signability. We know that he's got an offer out from LSU, which is a very good baseball program, and the Brewers are going to have to entice him to sign with the team. I would guess that David Stearns and Matt Arnold and others in the Brewers front office did their homework and know that he's a signable player if they're going to make him our first-round pick. So provided that we sign him and hopefully soon to get him playing baseball this summer, I think it was a great pick.
Scott.
Yeah, I think, if you look actually right around this time last year when people were looking way too early at the 2018 draft, there were actually several different publications that had him rated as the number one overall pick. So obviously his stock slid a little bit in the last year. Didn't quite have the senior year he was hoping for. I think that probably resonates with all of us as well. But, I think it seems like a great value pick, obviously, sort of right around where people thought he was going to go in this year's draft. But like I said, his stock kind of fell a little bit. And it looks like, I guess the only other part I kind of wanted to add to it without getting too deep into it is one scout compared him to Christian Yelich with not quite as much power. So obviously there's a bat tool there that Stearns likes.
Yeah, and one thing with power too, I really do think the power is something that can develop, in time. Not every guy is going to come out of high school and hit 30 home runs. It's going to be it's going to be different for different guys, but at times it's going to be a few-year process where guys are going to continue to bulk up and grow. I mean, the kid's 17 or 18 years old. He's going to not be a fully developed guy for a few more years, and not everybody is a power hitting high school prospect like a Prince Fielder. Sometimes it takes a little time.
Yeah, that's definitely some good analysis, guys. I personally thought it was good selection. Definitely one of the higher upside picks. What?
I just want to hear again. I've never heard this before.
Yeah, me neither.
This is being recorded. Keep this in mind.
Yeah.
I can pull this audio.
Probably not as good of a selection as Jake Gatewood. Was the last time the Brewers picked a player that I liked. But, no, Brice Turang up the middle, great hit tool out of high school. Like you mentioned, Scott, he was really highly rated this draft class for quite some time. The fact that he fell down a little bit on draft boards, and scouts are thinking, well, a little bit because of his senior year is a little bit uneven, they call it, so to speak. But I think almost like you get that prospect fatigue because he's been on people's boards so long and he wasn't standing out, or so he fell a little bit. But I think his upside is considerable, and usually I like players with a little bit better power tool, but for a middle infield prospect, someone with his type of hit tool, hitting from the left-hand side does not come about very often. So I think he could be a really quality player, and that comp of Christian Yelich, I think, is pretty spot on. In fact, they think Turang will develop a little bit of power himself. So I do think that, even though I would consider Yelich has got a 35 home run power possibly in him in the next couple of years, hopefully as a Brewer, Turang might top out, 2025 or something like that. Possibly. Some people aren't even that sold at that much power, but I believe in that he will, as long as his hit tool comes around or whatever, to a major league level, of course. And that's the thing with the risk you take with picking high school players. That takes a long time to develop that, and there could be a lot of wait. But kudos to the Brewers scouting staff, led by scouting director Todd Johnson, in not going a safe college route just because the Brewers are on the cusp of contention right now. You really got to play the long game when it comes to the MLB draft. And I know that the previous scouting director of the Brewers, Brice, kind of got burned a few times, in my opinion, back when the Brewers were contending kind of in the midst of the Brewers' last two playoff runs in 2008 and 2011, where he drafted some players, some quote-unquote safer players out of college, like Taylor Youngman, Jed Bradley, so that they could contribute quicker to a team that was contending. Or even a player like Eric Arnett, obviously, people don't like to hear that name. The fact they went one pick after Mike Trout. But the bottom line is there is really no safe pick any way you slice it, in my opinion, in the MLB draft. People say high school hitters are pitchers in particular, but high school players are definitely much more risky and less safe. But I don't know if that's necessarily overall true. So I like the fact that we're focusing on the highest ceiling for these players. And Turang, I think, is one of the best high school players in this draft. In fact, I was looking online from last August in the fall. Jonathan Mayo of MLB.com had written his top 10 high school draft prospects, and Turang was number one. So that goes to show that he's been highly thought of for a long time. And I do like the fact that he's a lefty bat. Those shortstops don't come around that often. Obviously, he throws right-handed. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited. I think he's going to be a pretty solid player, and hopefully, for sure, future major league Milwaukee Brewer.
Well, one thing I did want to point out, just really quick, I'm sorry, is a lot of people were saying, like, this is the year that the Brewers were going to trade up and really go up and get somebody. You can't do that in MLB. You're not allowed to trade. So that's the short answer to that. That's why we didn't do it.
I do hope that changes in the next collective bargaining agreement, for what it's worth. But yeah, Scott, that's a great point. And I was also just going to say that, one other shortstop that the Brewers took out of high school that didn't necessarily have huge power potential at the time was Robin Yount back in the 1970s, and made his debut within a year after being drafted. Different times today, and not comparing him to Robin Yount by any stretch, but there is a bit of a comp there within the Brewers' history.
Well, shortstop first-round picks out of high school alone, there's been some pretty good Hall of Fame caliber ones drafted by the Brewers. Obviously, we mentioned Yount. Paul Molitor, I believe, was drafted originally out of high school as a shortstop, and also Gary Sheffield, of course.
Yep.
So
that's right.
we even drafted not in the first round, but the Brewers drafted Scooter Gennett as a shortstop.
J.J. Hardy was the Brewers draft pick. But I forget. I think he played college
second
ball.
rounder.
Yeah, that's right.
No, he was out of high school. Second round high school. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and the thing about these shortstops, they're so athletic and baseball rat types typically that if they don't make it at shortstop, they're going to find their way somewhere on the field, regardless. So I mean, it's much safer than, like Scott was saying, that we might have stuff we draft like a first baseman or something. And the mock draft we did, I thought maybe we'd pick Seth Beard just because that'd be cool. He'd be a Brewer. It looks like he got picked by the Astros 28th overall, but. Anyway, and I've been kind of clamoring for the last couple of years for the Brewers to draft an arm with ace upside, but I will have to admit that this draft did not seem to have any, surefire potential aces that necessarily we passed on or anything. So it seemed logical that we go with bat, and it also seems logical that we kind of don't need any more outfielders. And I shouldn't say don't need any more, obviously. 4 or 5 years from now we may, but I'd rather us, draft someone middle infield with this type of upside, just because, as we saw with like Robin Yount, or he could play center field and at point in his career, Paul Molitor could play the hot corner, so Gary Sheffield, same thing. So yeah, you can't complain like this. The athletics, he's got some speed. He's got a good hit tool. Hopefully the power comes around because that could really make him an all-star player. But again, these are all things to dream on because the kid is out of high school. He could also flame completely out, and you just never know. But
do you guys have any? Do you guys have any questions about his signability at all? With the offer for him to go to LSU again, it's a really good baseball program, highly coveted, program nationally, and I don't know how much higher he could get, by playing college ball, but some guys do want that college education or that college experience, especially with a full ride like he's got through a great program. Do you guys have any questions at all about his signability?
Well, I think, just looking from personal experience, obviously a college degree is extremely valuable. Okay, hang on. Let me try this again. Let me retake. Extremely valuable college degree worth so much. No, I absolutely think that he's going to sign. I'm not worried about that at all, really.
Yeah, I mean, had he fallen out of the first round completely, or if he wasn't picked on the first day, for sure, I think you would consider it. But I think where his draft slot money is, I think you'd be foolish to pass up on it. I think that you'd be advised the same thing. And a lot of these guys, once they actually get the call, like they're excited to start their professional baseball career. And, if you go to college, there's definitely some risk. Like things don't go well for you, even if an injury could happen or anything. I mean, and once someone pulls him aside and explains to him that he doesn't actually have to be in college to maybe go to spring break or anything like that, then I think he'd probably realize he's not going to miss out on anything. In fact, he could keep going to spring break for many years if he chooses to.
Actually, he's got 3, maybe 4 years before it becomes sort of weird, where he would be a little bit too old to be at spring break. So Brice has got, we'll give him 4 years, and he should be done.
Well,
with
he might be a little disappointed to be drafted by the
2022.
Brewers because in the springtime, if you may have to be down in Arizona. That's where all their minor leaguers and their major leaguers train. So.
I've heard though that you can easily drive to Rocky Point, go to Puerto Penasco in Mexico. There's a lot of Brewer fans down there.
So as long as someone told that's Brice, I'm sure he's fine playing with the Brewers. Not a big deal. Playing fun. So anyway, so yeah, no, I think he definitely will sign. And pretty excited about the pick. So. Again, just did not know which direction the Brewers were going to go. We could have gone in a lot of different directions. There's still some decent players around the board when they picked. And this is in a year where, I wanted us to get a pretty high draft pick to make sure we got like a franchise-type player. This is one of these drafts that I think is rather weak, especially at the top. I don't see any surefire franchise in this draft. And so to get Turang kind of falling again, like he was in conversation for number 1 overall. It's not top 5 pick as of this time last year. So the fact, usually when teams pick a guy like that that's dropped due to a little sensor injury or whatnot or signability concerns, usually history has shown that those picks can pay off big time. I know like Max Scherzer fell pretty far down when the Diamondbacks originally picked him because he was because of signability concerns and other things. Even like there's been plenty of players if you research on draft history that have fallen due to one concern or another, or that should have went higher. And I think Turang falls in this category, and I'm excited about that. So we'll see. All right. Oh, and then I guess before we move on from our draft coverage and our next podcast, we'll hit on a couple of the other rounds of Brewer draft picks, hopefully, and go over the rest of our picks and talk about some more guys that we like our draft. But for right now, just talking about some other kind of cool thing. We already talked about Jarek, and I think it's actually pronounced Kelnick, as I'm hearing the draft experts say it on TV and whatnot. Otherwise, from Waukesha West High School. He was drafted 6th overall by the New York Mets tonight. The highest drafted high school player in Wisconsin history. Also, I believe he's the highest drafted MLB player born in Wisconsin ever. Also,
that's incredible. What a great night for Wisconsin and for baseball fans. It'll be really exciting to see him develop professionally, and I think that we all knew that he wasn't going to fall to the 21st pick, so that the Brewers would have a chance. So we'll wish him luck with the Mets, and hopefully he takes it easy on us when he makes it to the big leagues in a few years down the road. And just throwing out a quick kudos to Waukesha West, my alma mater, and Chad Montez, the baseball coach there, one more time. He has done a great job with that program, so kudos to them.
Yeah, and my initial impression was, was he the first high school player picked in tonight's draft as well? In the first round, and then the entire draft, the highest high school pick. However, I did look a little bit. He actually was born in July of '99, so he's already 18. And I'm gonna have to look at the top.
David Weathers' his son was born in December of '99, so he barely missed it.
Okay.
And if you guys think of my text, just to make you guys feel old, when we started our show, David Weathers' son would have been almost 5 years old.
Wow.
Yep.
And now he's the #1 draft pick, so.
Yep.
He's doing a lot more with his 90s-plus fastball than we're doing with our college degrees, but what can he do?
We probably saw him, actually. Yeah, no, exactly. We probably saw him actually running tickets down there or something like that. Like this.
Yeah, at which point he would have been a year and a half when David Weathers was a Brewer, and we were all working in the Brewers ticket office back in the first year of Miller Park in 2001. So just to make you guys feel even older. Yeah, they're pretty.
Wow. Well, not only that, but in a couple of years here, there'll be players drafted that were born after we started the show. That's only about 4 years out from that. So I'm sure we'll be doing this podcast for a minimum of 4 years, right?
Which Craig was already 10 years past when any reasonable person would have gone on spring break. So think about it in that perspective.
Wow. That just blew my mind.
I'm going to venture to guess that by then we're going to have over 100 followers on Twitter and over 25 listeners to our podcast.
Oh,
Do you count friends and family and us in that number, Scott?
Yeah, I have to. Otherwise, we'll.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I tend to agree. So yeah.
And I listen too, so I hope I'm counting on that. Like I sometimes listen after.
And special thanks to our sponsors. Don't listen to those numbers. Special thanks to Toys R Us and our sponsors.
Excellent.
I'd assume pretty much just the only people that are really listening other than family and friends is like the interns that have to do the editing.
Is Esmeralda doing all right this week, Scott, for your intern?
I couldn't tell you. She got canned. So.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, sorry about that. We have a high standard here, and she wasn't living up to it. So.
Rough 5 days. Wow.
All right, guys. Let's talk a little bit about the Milwaukee Brewers. Last week's game, I know we usually do our predictions. We had 3 games against the Cardinals at Miller Park, which we won two of the 3 of those, which was awesome. really happy about that. The final big game win that gave us a win in the series. Actually, that was awesome. But then, of course, we went to Chicago White Sox, who are not one of the better teams in baseball right now, and we only won 1 of 3. So we were 3-3 on the week, which I don't think any of us expected 3-3, did we? I think we all expected like 4-2 or 5-1 or something. Or
yeah,
you guys remember?
I think we were all too optimistic this week, and the thing with it is that every team goes through ups and downs. I'm hoping that the White Sox series was just kind of a down moment, not a sign of worse things to come in the month of June, and I tend to think that's true. And if we finish 500 on a bad week, that's to me acceptable. And you move on from the White Sox series and hopefully have a good week this week. So let's hope that we can win a couple games on the road this week.
Yeah, nothing stressful about that White Sox series either, really. I mean, we either lost by 5 or won by 5 in every one of them. So no nail biters, really.
Yeah, it looked just like we were off a little bit. Had a little bit of a bullpen malfunction on Sunday during that game, and it's been so rare this year that it was a little eye-opening. But again, I don't think it's a sign of a greater trend or anything. It just was one of those games, or I guess 2 of those games. But I don't put too much stock into just that short of a window looking at the team. So I think you are much better off looking at the product on the field over the last couple of months rather than just, one weekend series where if we were taking 2 out of 3, we wouldn't be talking about this now.
It is kind of funny when our 5th or 6th best pitcher out of the bullpen is allowing runs, and I'm shocked by it. I'm like, wait, what? What's happening? I mean, that's how privileged we are with this bullpen.
That's right. And they're going to go through games, and it's going to happen again, and it is what it is. But hopefully, again, we can just stay at the level that we were at for the first couple months of the year or close to it.
We should all say a baseball cliche here. You just used "it is what it is" and ups and downs. That's it's a long season. You just got to take it one game at a time.
One game at a time. That's right, Nuke Lelouch. That's great.
There you go. But obviously, we should not fail to mention the fact that the Cubs and the Cardinals have been playing, pretty good ball too, and are kind of lockstep with us. We still have them at arm's length, so to speak, with I think a couple-game lead in the division. Big series a week from now, as we open up a homestand. Our next homestand, we open up 3 games again. The Cubs at Miller Park. We're obviously 1-7 against the Cubs so far this year. So I'd like to change that. Let's hope, but I don't know. Dude, I guess before we get any other observations on the Brewers 3-3 week against the Cardinals and the White Sox overall, as far as any concerns or highlights.
Not a lot of highlights.
Yeah. I was gonna say. Great to beat the Cardinals 2 out of 3 times. That was exciting. So I think that, we do have a nice, couple 3-game lead right now. That being said, it's going to all come down to, like you alluded to, Craig, our head-to-head matchups against division rivals. So far, we're I believe 4-3 or 1 game over 500 against the Cardinals on the year and have fared very poorly against the Cubs. So actually to have a division lead right now is kind of a miracle, considering that we're 1-7 against Chicago on the year. So if we can change that a little bit and play a bit better in our series against the Cubs starting next week, look forward to good things in the second half.
Yeah, just looking at that White Sox series, I don't think we had a single hit with runners in scoring position. Maybe 1. I think it was 0. Maybe it was 1. I don't remember. Whatever it was terrible. So obviously that needs to improve a little bit.
Our anonymous source, Tom Carter, just said it was a blip. He just said that Tom was given the inside information, and he just said it was a little bit of a blip, and he thinks that we're going to be fine in Cleveland and Philadelphia on this road trip. Well,
I know 2 things about that. 1, I don't necessarily consider that inside information. But 2, Tom Carter does not want us to use his full name as an anonymous source. Otherwise, he loses all anonymity. So we have to remember that.
Okay. So we just we can edit this, I'm sure, but we just say T. Carter then, or Tom C. or.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we don't use both, because We have a lot of very savvy fans, and they can put 2 and 2 together if we use both.
Okay, so not Tom Carter, but Tom C. or T. Carter. Got it. Okay.
Yep. I'm sure we'll get it right next time.
Duly noted. I guess before we do our predictions for this next upcoming week, as we got 2 games come up in Cleveland against the Indians, and then 3 games in Philadelphia against the Phillies, which I know Vince is hoping to attend one of those.
Yeah.
Let's first talk a little bit about the Brewers' offense. Did kind of come around. We scored like 17 runs one game against the Mets, and we took care of business against the Cardinals. The bullpen is holding up famously. Josh Hader's a big part of that, but everyone else really just still showing their dominance, and it's really making our kind of our starting rotation that has had kind of led by Chase Anderson with Jimmy Nelson out, but Chase Anderson's ERA I think is approaching 5. It does not really pitch all particularly well through most of his starts. I guess we're getting by just having our starters get through about 5-6 innings at most, and then turning over to our lockdown bullpen. And so far, that recipe for success is working, as long as our offense has been scoring runs. And with Kane and Yelich out the lineup, that's happened mostly. And obviously, our unsung hero of the year at this point, I would have to say, is Jesus Aguilar. Obviously, has been great. And basically filling in the absence of Ryan Braun, who I guess even if he's on the DL, he doesn't like to play in games or whatever. And then Eric Thames, who's been out for most, the last month plus, and he's been covering first base for the most part and doing a great job of that. I mean, outside of that, I do have concerns going forward. I think the team could even be stronger with Braun healthy, if that's even possible. And once Eric Thames comes back, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Just overall, if our offense we get a shot in the arm from those guys, or if you think it's time to start even looking at trade possibilities as we enter the first couple weeks of June.
I mean, I've got to think that Ryan Braun is too good of a hitter to not come around at some point. And I know he's getting a little bit older, and he's going to continue to suffer from, it seems like, these nagging injuries every season. But that being said, I still think that Ryan Braun has enough talent that he hasn't shown yet this year that he is going to come back and be a contributor to this team going forward. And I'll look for bigger numbers out of him in the second half. I know we still have a ways yet till the deadline, or till the All-Star break, but I do think that Ryan Braun is going to be stronger, and Eric Thames can't do anything but help your offense. So how Craig Counsell, continues to balance the platoon guys, I guess will remain to be seen. But I just think that having Eric Thames, whether he's back toward being our everyday first baseman, or whether he's kind of eased into his role again and splitting time with Braun and Aguilar, or whether or not he's a great left-handed power threat off the bench, any way that you slice it, I think that Eric Thames coming back is going to be helpful for this offense.
Yeah, not only that, I think it's going to be helpful for this clubhouse. I mean, the guy just brings a lot of energy. He gets people fired up, and I think that's really important. So I think he is definitely missed, and can't wait to see him back in a couple weeks.
Another note is that, and all this kind of transpired very quickly, but the Brewers, sent Orlando Arcia down. We talked about that in our last couple podcasts, but because Tyler Saladino went down with injury within a few days of that, we had to bring Garcia back up. He had a big game-winning walk-off hit against the Cardinals, which was awesome. And now I kind of feel that he may be getting his legs and his bat going here at the major league level. So when Tyler Saladino comes off the DL himself, he may be back to his reserve role and not necessarily starting shortstop. That's my feeling on it. But do you guys think that perhaps when Saladino comes off the DL, we will still send Orlando back to AAA, or to let him get some, or does it depend on how he does between now and then, I guess?
I mean, I think partially it depends on how he's doing between now and then, but let's hope that Orlando Arcia has re-solidified himself in the starting lineup, because that means he's hitting. To me, Arcia brings a ton of value to the team with his defense no matter what. So I think that really does have to be taken into account. And I get what Brewers management was thinking and sending him, to AAA at the time, and you give him a 10 days or whatever it was going to be down there to kind of regroup and reset himself offensively. But I really was questioning whether or not we could afford to lose his defense. It's just so outstanding that I think that you really do have to ask yourself that question. So let's hope that Arcia continues to hit at least decently so we can keep his glove on the field as well.
Yeah, I mean, Arcia does, when he's going right, I mean, he's definitely, I guess, good at taking the ball to the opposite field. I know in the last series he had a nice hit and run on a pitch that was actually kind of inside, and he did a great job of hitting it the other way and finding the soft spot in the infield. So, I mean, we know that he could do it, but obviously he's just really scuffled this year, and I don't know. I mean, so there's signs of life. He just hasn't come around yet still. Hopefully he will, but, by the time Saladino's ready.
I mean, I really felt coming into this year, Orlando Arcia was going to have a mini breakout year and really solidify himself as not only our for sure starting shortstop, but possibly one of the best young shortstops in the league. And that just hasn't happened yet. And what is just still astounding to me is the fact that if you step back and look at the Brewers overall and the fact that they, their starting pitching has been good, but, not led by any dominant player. We've gone through plenty of injuries on offense. We've had to have guys step on off the bench. Orlando Arcia has underperformed. Our catchers overall haven't been outstanding with the bats. And somehow we're sitting here about 15-ish games over 500. Our bullpen has been that dominant that in spite of all those things I just mentioned, we're still doing this well. It a little bit scares me because it reminds me a little bit of last year when we were in first place for a good portion of the season beyond the All-Star break, and then we ended up getting passed up by most specifically the Cubs, but we ended up missing on the wild card spot too. In all honesty, what separates last year's team and this year's team, in your opinion, and do you have the same concerns I do, I guess?
I mean, in many ways, this is the exact same team as last year. We lost, just a couple guys that we acquired at the deadline with Schwarzak and Neil Walker, and I guess I don't even remember anybody else that we've lost since last season. So, I mean, you hope that another year has gone by with a bunch of young guys that maybe they are getting their sea legs, so to speak, a bit more, where that year of experience can help a younger team down the stretch. So maybe this year it's a little bit different, and you hope so. I do think that if the Brewers are, ready to get out of quote-unquote rebuild mode and actually make a run for it this year, I think that Stearns is going to have to be really, vigilant at the deadline this season and acquiring perhaps, some talent. And I don't know where that's exactly going to come from, but you could definitely see some upgrades across the diamond or certainly in the starting rotation. And I do think that the Brewers will probably be more active at the deadline this year, even though we got a couple minor pieces last season.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I know a lot of us last year were really hoping that, we were going to go out and acquire an ace, but we also were very much aware that we were still technically in a rebuild mode, so we didn't want to give up the future to do that. We wound up not making a move, and we wound up missing the playoffs by a game. From a franchise that isn't used to making the playoffs, it was a little bit disappointing. Thinking that if we would have made a trade and just improved one game, that we probably would have had a shot being able to make a run. But kind of like what Vince said, I guess I want to agree and piggyback off of that a little bit. We didn't really know what to expect with last year's team because we did have so many young players and just wasn't really sure what to expect. And at some point, you kind of have to say, maybe this is what we're supposed to expect. So, to be this good for this long, you'd like to think that this is a team that's going to stick around. But the bullpen seems to be a lot better this year, but still worried about the bats a little bit, just like last year.
But and don't forget too, guys. We didn't bring up Josh Hader until June of last year, I believe. So maybe having Hader with us for a full season could be the difference in making up a couple games that way at the end of the day. I also think that, Craig, to your point from earlier, I mean, the fact that the Brewers have played this well and we are sitting 14 games over 500 on June, whatever today is, 4th, is pretty incredible. Considering, again, that we've missed Eric Thames for a significant portion of the year, that Ryan Braun has been either injured or not hitting very well. Marcia hasn't hit at all, and our starting rotation is missing. Jimmy Nelson has had injuries to Zach Davies for a significant amount of time. Chase Anderson was on the DL for one stint. It's been fairly incredible that we've been able to put together this record with those factors, and I think that, you've got nothing but positive things to look forward to if you add another starting pitcher, if Jimmy Nelson comes back, if Ryan Braun starts to hit. A lot of ifs, but if those things start to happen, as they should, we should be even better than the first half, which is pretty incredible considering our record. And then the obvious caveat, too, to your point, is the big difference between last year and this year is Lorenzo Cain and Christian Yelich at the top of the lineup as well. So, that would be one, I think, major difference.
Great point, guys. Yeah. And that'll do it for this episode. We'll see you guys soon.
Go Brewers. Stay classy, Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah, stay classy. Go Brewers. All that.
Go Brewers.